I never thought I'd be grateful for my father's apparent final insult. Standing in our family's living room, watching my brother Marcus wave the property deed like a victory flag, I remembered Dad's last words to me. Sometimes the greatest treasures lie in the most overlooked places. At the time, I thought he was just being cryptic and philosophical, as he often was. Now, 3 months after his passing, those words took on an entirely different meaning. Look, Elena, Marcus said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. I know you're disappointed, but Dad clearly knew what he was doing. The downtown properties are better off in experienced hands. He glanced meaningfully at his wife, Jessica, who sat perched on our mother's expensive sofa like she was already the lady of the manor. I kept my face carefully neutral, thinking about the geological survey results hidden in my apartment. And the desert land? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Well, Jessica chimed in, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against her designer handbag. Since you clearly have no use for it, Marcus, and I thought it would be best if we took that off your hands too. We could develop it, eventually. My mother, who hadn't said more than 2 words to me since Dad's funeral, nodded in agreement. Your father knew you weren't cut out for property management, Elena. Always with your head in those science books, running off to geological surveys instead of learning the family business. If they only knew how those geological surveys had paid off. I thought back to 6 months ago, when Dad first showed signs of illness. He called me to his study one evening, something he rarely did. I was usually the overlooked one, the disappointment who chose to study geology instead of business administration like Marcus. Elena, he'd said, his voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. I need you to do something for me. That plot of land out in the desert, the one everyone thinks is worthless. He'd slid a folder across his desk. I need you to study it. Really study it. Use those skills you've learned. I'd been confused but agreed. Dad had always been strategic, even if his methods weren't always clear. The land in question was 5,000 acres of seemingly worthless desert, part of a larger purchase he'd made decades ago. The profitable portions had been developed into suburban communities, but this particular plot had remained untouched. For 3 months, while Dad's health declined and Marcus positioned himself as the heir apparent to the family real estate empire, I studied the land. I ran surveys, took samples, and consulted with trusted colleagues. What I found nearly made me drop my testing equipment. Now, standing in our family home while Marcus and Jessica gloated over their inheritance, I thought about the preliminary mining rights agreement sitting in my lawyer's office, waiting to be finalized. You're right, I said finally, watching confusion flicker across their faces at my easy agreement. I'm not cut out for property management. The land is yours, Jessica. Really? Jessica couldn't hide her surprise. She'd clearly been expecting a fight. I mean, of course it is. We'll draw up the transfer papers immediately. Actually, I said, reaching into my bag, I took the liberty of having my lawyer prepare them already. Since you're so eager to take this worthless plot off my hands. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He'd always been suspicious of any gesture that seemed too generous. What's the catch, Elena? I smiled, channeling all the times I'd watched and schmoozed with investors. No catch. Just trying to be helpful. Though I paused for effect, you might want to read the mineral rights clause carefully. Standard stuff, really. Previous owner retains any mineral rights unless explicitly transferred. Dad always insisted on that in his contracts, remember? Mineral rights. Jessica scoffed. It's desert land. There's nothing but sand and rocks. Probably, I agreed, sliding the papers across the coffee table. But Dad always was thorough with his contracts. Marcus snatched up the papers, his eyes scanning the clauses. I watched as his business degree finally proved useful, observing the exact moment he realized what he was reading. This is ridiculous, he spluttered. You can't separate mineral rights from the property deed. Actually, I said, pulling out another document, in this state you can. And Dad did, years ago. He separated them before he even drew up his will. These papers just confirm the existing arrangement. Mom finally spoke up, her voice sharp. What are you playing at, Elena? I turned to her, seeing for the first time not the imposing mother who'd always found me wanting, but a woman who'd backed the wrong child. Nothing, Mom, just honoring Dad's wishes. He left the land to me, knowing I'd understand its true value. Now I'm giving the surface rights to Jessica, just like you all want. Everything else, I smiled, thinking of the geological surveys, the core samples, the preliminary mining company contracts. Everything else stays with me. Surface rights. Jessica's voice had risen an octave. What does that mean? But Marcus knew. I could see it in his face, the same look he'd had when we were kids, and he realized he'd underestimated his quiet little sister. It means, he said through gritted teeth, that Elena keeps anything valuable found underground. Any minerals, metals, or, he trailed off, the implications finally hitting him. Rare earth elements, I finished for him. Some of the largest deposits found in the region, according to the surveys. Dad had them done years ago, didn't he tell you? That's why he never developed that plot. He was waiting for the right time, the right person to understand its real value. The room fell silent. I could almost hear the calculations running through Marcus's head, the missed opportunity slipping through his fingers. You're lying, Jessica said, but her voice wavered. There's nothing valuable out there. I pulled out one final document, the preliminary offer from the mining company. Their initial estimate of the deposit's value made the downtown properties look like pocket change. Feel free to have your own surveys done, I said, standing up and gathering my things. Though you might want to read the terms of the mineral rights first. Any surveys or exploration would need my approval as the rights holder. Dad wouldn't do this, Marcus said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. He wouldn't give you something this valuable. No, I raised an eyebrow. Maybe you didn't know him as well as you thought. He always said the real value of property isn't in what you can see. I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Jessica, congratulations on your new property. I'm sure you'll find the surface rights very valuable. As I walked out of my childhood home, I heard the beginning of what would surely be a spectacular argument. Mom was demanding to see the documents again. Jessica was shouting about being tricked, and Marcus was frantically calling his lawyer. In my car, I finally allowed myself a moment to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Dad had known exactly what he was doing, setting up this elaborate lesson in humility for his golden child and his status-obsessed wife. He'd known Marcus would try to grab everything, that Jessica would get greedy, that Mom would back them as she always had. And he'd known that his quiet daughter, the one who'd chosen rocks over real estate, would be the only one who could recognize the real treasure he'd left behind. My phone buzzed, a text from the mining company's CEO. The board had reviewed the surveys and was ready to move forward. The initial public offering would be announced next quarter, once all the paperwork was finalized. I started my car, glancing one last time at the house where I'd grown up feeling second best. Through the window, I could see Marcus gesturing wildly while Jessica appeared to be having a meltdown on Mom's expensive sofa. Thanks, Dad, I whispered, thinking of his final words again. The greatest treasures really do lie in the most overlooked places. Whether they're underground or inside the quiet daughter nobody expected to succeed. As I pulled away from the house, I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. The real work, and the real satisfaction, was yet to come. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in proving people wrong, but in proving your father right. The next few weeks were a masterclass in desperate attempts to rewrite the past. Marcus, it turned out, wasn't going to accept defeat gracefully. Not when billions were potentially at stake. I was in my office at the geological survey company where I'd built my career when his first attack came. My assistant, David, rushed in with a concerned look. Elena, you need to see this. He handed me his tablet, open to a legal notice. Your brother just filed an emergency injunction against the mineral rights transfer. I scanned the document, a smile playing at my lips. Marcus's lawyer had thrown everything at the wall, hoping something would stick. Mental incompetency claims about Dad, allegations of undue influence, even suggestions that I had somehow manipulated the geological surveys. He's desperate, I said, handing the tablet back. And sloppy. Dad had 3 separate mental competency evaluations done before he restructured the mineral rights. Standard procedure for any major asset transfer. David raised an eyebrow. You knew this was coming. My father knew. I turned to look out my office window at the desert landscape stretching toward the horizon. He documented everything, had multiple witnesses for every decision. Marcus was too busy counting his inheritance to notice. My phone buzzed. Sarah Chen, the mining company CEO. Elena, she said when I answered, I assume you've seen the injunction filing. Just now. Don't worry, it won't hold up. I'm not worried, Sarah replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Your father was very thorough when he approached us last year. Every meeting recorded, every agreement witnessed and notarized. He wanted to make sure no one could challenge your position as the rights holder. Last year, while Marcus thought Dad was just a sick old man hanging on to outdated business practices, he'd been methodically setting up his daughter's future. The board meeting is still on for next week, Sarah continued. We'd like you to present the initial development plans. After hanging up, I found myself looking at the one personal photo I kept in my office. Dad and me at my college graduation, him beaming proudly despite my choice of geology over business school. He'd known even then, hadn't he? A commotion outside my office pulled me from my memories. Jessica's voice, shrill and demanding, cut through the professional quiet of the survey company. I don't care if she's in a meeting. I'm family. I nodded to David, who opened the door. Jessica stormed in, looking less polished than usual. Marcus's recent behavior had clearly been taking its toll. You have to stop this, she demanded without preamble. Do you know what you're doing to your brother? To this family? I leaned back in my chair, studying her. I'm running a business, Jessica, just like Dad taught us. Well, taught Marcus anyway. This isn't about business. She slammed her hands on my desk. Marcus hasn't slept in days. He's obsessed with finding a way to invalidate those mineral rights. Mom's threatening to get her own lawyers involved. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said quietly, you and Marcus did that years ago. Every time you belittled my choices, every time you treated me like the family failure. Dad saw it all. Your father was a foolish old man, ho. Careful, I cut in, my voice sharp. That foolish old man just outsmarted all of you, and insulting him won't help your case in court. Jessica sank into a chair, her anger deflating into something more calculated. What do you want, Elena? Money? A share in the downtown properties? Name your price. I pulled out a folder, the latest survey results showing even larger rare earth deposits than initially estimated. This isn't about money, Jessica. It's about legacy. Dad trusted me with this because he knew I'd understand its true value. Not just the minerals, but what we can do with them. What are you talking about? These aren't just any rare earth elements. They're crucial components for green technology, renewable energy. The mining company isn't just planning to extract them. We're building a research center, developing sustainable mining practices. This could revolutionize how these resources are harvested. I watched understanding dawn on her face. That's why he chose you. Not because of the geology degree, but because I'd see beyond the dollar signs. I finished. Marcus would have sold to the highest bidder and moved on to the next deal. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. He's going to fight you on this. He won't stop until he either wins or destroys himself trying. I know, that's why Dad made everything ironclad. He wasn't just protecting me, he was protecting Marcus from himself. After Jessica left, I called my lawyer. How bad is the injunction? Laughable, she replied. Your father's documentation is perfect. But Elena, they're not going to stop with legal challenges. Be careful. She was right. Over the next few days, Marcus launched a full-scale campaign to discredit me. Anonymous tips to business journalists suggesting I falsified survey data. Whispers to potential investors about my lack of business experience. He even tried to contact Sarah Chen directly, offering a partnership that would cut me out entirely. But Dad's planning proved unshakable. Every accusation was met with documented evidence of his intentions. Every legal challenge fell apart against the wall of witnesses and notarized documents. The morning of the mining company's board meeting, I arrived at their headquarters to find an unexpected visitor waiting in the lobby, my mother. Mom? I hadn't spoken to her since that day in the living room. What are you doing here? She looked older somehow, more tired than I'd ever seen her. Your father came to see me, a week before he died. He told me what he was planning, showed me the survey results. I waited, unsure where this was going. I told him he was making a mistake, she continued. That Marcus was the businessman in the family, that you weren't ready for this kind of responsibility. She met my eyes. He just smiled and said, watch her prove us all wrong. Why are you telling me this now? Because I got the final injunction ruling this morning. Marcus's last appeal was denied. It's over. She reached into her bag and pulled out an old notebook. Your father wanted you to have this once everything was settled. His research notes from when he first bought the land. He always knew what was down there. He was just waiting for the right person to bring it out. I took the notebook, recognizing Dad's neat handwriting. All those years when everyone thought he was crazy for holding onto worthless desert land. He was investing in his daughter's future. Mom's voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Elena, for not seeing what he saw. Before I could respond, Sarah Chen approached. Elena, the board is ready. Mom straightened her shoulders. Go, show them what my daughter can do. The board meeting was a triumph. The development plans were approved unanimously, with construction of the research center to begin immediately. As I presented the environmental impact studies and sustainable mining proposals, I could almost feel Dad's presence, his quiet pride in seeing his vision become reality. Afterward, sitting in my office reviewing the final contracts, I opened Dad's notebook. On the first page, in his familiar handwriting, was a message. Elena, my quiet daughter who sees the treasure beneath the surface, you've finally proven what I always knew. Success isn't about taking what's visible, it's about understanding what lies beneath. You've learned to see the real value in things others overlook. That's a gift far greater than any property deed. P.S. Check the survey coordinates on page 43. There's another deposit I never told anyone about. Consider it your graduation present, delayed but worth the wait. Love, Dad. I smiled, reaching for my geological equipment. Some treasures, it seems, are still waiting to be discovered. 6 months later, I stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Elena Chen Center for Sustainable Resource Development. Marcus and Jessica had moved to the East Coast, unable to face their failure in the local business community. Mom stood beside me as I gave my speech, her eyes wet with pride. The center would revolutionize how we extract and process rare earth elements, making green technology more accessible worldwide. Dad's worthless desert land would help shape the future of sustainable energy. As I watched the first excavators break ground, I thought about value, how it means different things to different people. Marcus saw it in property deeds and bank accounts. Jessica saw it in status and appearances. But Dad had taught me to look deeper, to find worth in the overlooked and unexpected. Sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you leave behind, but who you trust to carry it forward. Dad's real gift wasn't the mineral rights or the land. It was the confidence to stand firm when everyone else thought I was wrong. The desert wind kicked up, carrying the promise of change. Somewhere I knew Dad was smiling.